Now, reporting date is 31 December 2020 and we had 100 million loan and this is to be paid in 5 years time. As was in my previous example, the lender or the bank wanted us to maintain the gearing ratio at 40%, and that was the conditions on which the loan was granted. In any case, where the gearing ratio rises above 40%, we immediately become liable to pay the bank loan, and this is a loan covenant, the breach of which will have the effect that the loan becomes immediately liable to pay and the bank has the right to demand it immediately. By the reporting date, the gearing ratio rose from 40% to 50%, and the financial state, now we are on the reporting date 31st December 2020, financial statements were authorized for issue by 30th April 2021. Now, during the subsequent reporting period, you know what it is? The bank has decided not to demand it immediately. Still, LKS 1 requires you to show 100 million rupees not under non-current, has to be under current liability category. I hope it was clear. Even if the bank decides not to demand it immediately, if the bank decides that during the subsequent period, still as you prepare the financial statements on 31st December 2020, this bank loan of 100 million has to be categorized under current liability category, not under non-current. That exception is very important. The examiner can set some examples or questions on that. Anything else other than what can be categorized under current should be categorized under non-current liability. So, here we can move on. Here we go. The statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income. LKS 1 provides the following definitions. Other comprehensive income are income and expenses recognized outside of profit or loss as required by particular SLFRS standards. Total comprehensive income is the entity's profit or loss and other comprehensive income for the period. LKS 1 requires that OCI is classified into two groups as follows. Now, I need to first explain total comprehensive income, and then let me explain other comprehensive income, and this is also an important area in our discussion. LKS 1. This is the equity of an entity. By now, you know what equity of a company can comprise with. It is comprising with the share capital and reserves. So, there can be multiple number of items or reserves under reserves, but let me take just two items for the convenience: retained earnings and revaluation reserves. Whenever the share capital changes, equity changes. Whenever one of the reserves changes, once again the equity changes. So, anyone will ever think of changing equity either by changing share capital or by changing reserves, one of the reserves. And let me take few instances that will have the effect of change in equity. Share issues, obviously that will have an effect on equity. Equity increases as the company receives resources, maybe cash, and the company issues the shares to shareholders, equity changes. Share redemptions the other way around, share redemptions. This is where the company gives money back to the shareholders and their shareholding ownership will get cancelled off. Dividend payments to shareholders, dividends payments to shareholders, part of the profit of the company will be paid back to the shareholders to please them, so they expect kind of a return for their investment, and the retained earnings reserves comes down, the equity figure also comes down as a consequence. In contrast, we revalue property, plant and equipment. As property, plant and equipment are revalued, the surplus, we will talk about only the surpluses here, surplus is taken to an equity account in the name of revaluation reserve. So, equity once again rises, increases. Now, the instances where the equity changes either by issuing shares or redeeming shares or paying dividends or property, plant and equipment being revalued with a surplus were taken into two. Some of them were on my right hand side, the other one was on my left hand side. So, what I have listed on my right hand side are the instances which have the effect on equity and they themselves have a lot of things in common. What are these? Share issues, share redemptions and dividends not only change equity, not only contribute to change equity, and they are also the transactions between the company and the shareholders. Share issue, the company issues shares and the shareholders get involved to buy the shares. Share redemptions, the company will cancel off the shareholding and return money, so the shareholders will get involved to receive cash back and to surrender their shareholding or ownership. Dividends, this is where the company pays part of the profit and the shareholders are receiving that profit in form of a cash payment. So, these are not only just the instances of changes in equity, also kind of transactions between the company and the shareholders. And this one is bit of a contrasting one. Why? Here the equity changes without the shareholders getting involved. Equity changes, equity increases, but the shareholders have not got involved. Now, equity changes due to two reasons. Equity changes due to the involvement of the shareholders, involvement of the shareholders. Equity changes not due to the involvement of the shareholders, due to the performances of the entity, performances of the entity. And what do you prefer? You prefer the equity changes as a result of the shareholders' involvement, or you prefer the equity change without the shareholders getting involved? You prefer the equity change without the shareholders getting involved. And if the equity change is not divided and separated into the equity change as a result of the shareholders' involvement and the equity changes due to the pure performances of the company, whoever who was to see them separately will not be able to identify unless in financial reporting we do the distinction. Now, one fine day when I was in grade 5, my school teacher wanted all of us to do a painting on peace. It is not P-I-E-C, it is P-E-A-C-E, peace. Everyone was to have a peaceful country. So, peace was the caption on which we need to do the painting. I know I am not good at painting, but my father is. He is a very good artist and a painter, and I took a canvas and multiple number of colors. I started with my all the full potential to create a painting that is depicting peace, and my father understood that was an utter failure, and he contributed, and just in 2-3 hours time he came out with one of the masterpiece of painting that is depicting and showing peace, where there is a lake with clear and transparent still water, surrounded by mountains, and this lake is like a mirror of the towering mountains around. Above the lake is the sky with white fluffy clouds, and the clouds are like the cotton buttons floating in the atmosphere. And this was presented to my school teacher. I could never impress my school teacher that it was a painting done by me. And the school teacher knows how good I am in painting. So then, the teacher cannot measure and assess my performances because my shareholders have got involved. So I had to explain to my school teacher to what extent I got my father to involve in completing this painting. So where the shareholders, the owners get involved, the poor immaculate performances of the entity cannot be measured. Now LKS 1 says as a result, you need to show this equity change separately, the amount of equity changes as a result of the performances of the entity and the equity changes as a result of the involvement of the shareholders. Now, the equity changes without the entity getting the shareholders involved is called total comprehensive income. Total comprehensive income. Under total comprehensive income, are there 6 items, and let me explain that part now. So, I am going to explain total comprehensive income. What do you mean by the total comprehensive income? Equity changes in the entity in a particular period where the shareholders have not got involved. Now, in calculating the total comprehensive income, I said there are 6 items altogether, out of which profit figure, profit after tax is the core item, the main item. Main item is the profit. You know, if you make the profit, the equity increases, and that is where the shareholders never get involved. It is not as a result of a share, it is not as a result of a share redemption. This is purely because of the performances. Apart from this main item of profit figure for the year, we have another sub 5 items and we call them other comprehensive income. Other comprehensive income. Other comprehensive income. So, what items are we recognizing under other comprehensive income? They are the gains or losses or income or expenses which cannot be recognized into profit and loss. Incomes and expenses arising from other LFRSs which cannot be recognized into the profit calculations for the period. They are nothing but the incomes and expenses themselves, but you cannot include them into the profit calculations for the year. So, how many items are we going to recognize under other comprehensive income? There are 5 items. What are these 5? Revaluation gains of property, plant and equipment or intangible assets. Fair value changes of fair value through OCI financial assets. Fair value changes of fair value through OCI financial assets. Effective hedge. Effective hedge. Portion of hedge instruments under cash flow hedges. Under cash flow hedges. Actuarial gains and losses of LKS 19. Translation difference arising on translating foreign operations into the presentation currency. Into the presentation currency. These 5 items, revaluation gains of property, plant and equipment and intangibles, fair value changes of fair value through OCI financial assets, effective hedge portions of hedge instruments under cash flow hedges, actuarial gains and losses, translation difference arising translating foreign operations into presentation currency. Here the profit after tax 100,000, and let me take all these 5 together. The total of all these 5 items is 50,000. That is the total OCI, other comprehensive income. Other comprehensive income plus the profit figure for the year is 150,000, which is the total comprehensive income. If the equity has changed by 200,000 rupees during the current year, out of that 200,000 total equity change, 150,000 is the equity change without the shareholders getting involved, and the balance 50,000 equity change would have been due to the shareholders' involvement, maybe because we have gone for a share issue and so on and so forth. So, what is important here is the equity change without the shareholders getting involved, and this distinction is nicely done by showing total comprehensive income, other comprehensive income, profit figure and total equity. Now, there are reclassification adjustments. If you go to the standard LKS 1, reclassification adjustments. Let us see what it is. Reclassification adjustments definition is given. Reclassification adjustments are amounts reclassified to profit or loss in the current period that were recognized in other comprehensive income in the current or previous periods. Reclassification adjustments are amounts reclassified to profit or loss in the current period that are recognized in other comprehensive income in the current or previous periods. Now, in my document given for you all, these 5 items also have been separated. Items that might be reclassified or recycled to profit or loss in subsequent accounting periods. This is also important, remember. Foreign exchange gains and losses arising on translations of foreign operations. This is this one. Translation differences arising on translating foreign operations into the presentation currency. Initially, this is recognized into OCI as the foreign operation will be sold off. This is recycled to profit and loss, recycled. Later, it is taken to profit and loss as the foreign operation will be sold in the future. This equity figure or the item recognized to OCI will be recycled back to profit and loss. Then, one item is repeated and you can just ignore it here. Fair value changes of fair value through OCI financial asset. There you need to be little careful. Investment in equity in instruments of other entities, investments in equity items of other entities acquired not for trading also will be categorized under fair value through OCI under SLFRS 9. Equity items of other entities not for trading, equity not for trading, equity not for trading. Then if an entity acquires debt items of other companies with both objectives of collecting contractual cash flows and sales proceeds also will be under fair value through OCI. Debt items to collect sales proceeds and contractual cash flows. Contractual cash flows. The fair value changes of both these investments will be taken, will be recognized into OCI. Now, LCase 1 says the fair value changes of debt instruments, this particular one, the fair value changes of this investments recognized to OCI can be reclassified to profit and loss later as the investments are sold. But fair value changes of equity items, fair value changes of equity items categorized under fair value through OCI, fair value changes of equity items under fair value through OCI recognized to other comprehensive income cannot be recycled to profit and loss, cannot be recycled. Also, revaluations gains of property, plant and equipment, intangible assets cannot be recycled, and if you want to transfer them to profit straight away, you need to transfer to retained earnings, not to profit and loss. Retained earning in the equity statement only, we are going to show the pluses and minuses. We are going to deduct it from revaluation reserves and add it to retained earnings, not to profit and loss. Then effective hedge portion of hedge instruments under cash flow hedges, actuarial gains and losses are also not recycled or reclassified to profit and loss. You need to adjust and add them to retained earnings in the equity statement. You do the cuts and chops, you do the changes of equity items from the equity items concerned to retained earnings right on the face of the statement of changes in equity. Never do we add them to current year profit calculations. So, that is an important part. So, there are only two items that can be reclassified, others cannot be reclassified to profit and loss. Then LKS 1 requires an entity to disclose income tax relating to each component of OCI. This may be achieved by either disclosing each component of OCI net of any related tax effect, or disclosing OCI before related tax effects with one amount shown for tax. Entities can prepare one combined statement showing profit or loss for the year and OCI. Alternatively, an entity can prepare a statement of profit or loss and a separate statement of OCI. Let me explain that part. So, we are starting the profit and loss, which follows other comprehensive income. This is a single statement. I am not going to show the entire profit and loss statements, that takes time. Say we had sales, cost of sales and so on and so forth. Here we have profit after tax. Profit after tax is 500,000. Right below the profit and tax, right below the profit after tax should be other comprehensive income. Let me use abbreviations, but you can't use abbreviations at the exam. And let me take only one item, and other comprehensive income, say revaluation gain of property, plant and equipment. Revaluation gain of property, plant and equipment, 200,000. Now, the deferred tax effects on items of OCI should be recognized to OCI itself. Eventually, the amount by which the reserve is recognized should be the net amount after deducting the deferred tax effect. So, what does it say? Now, accounting written down value of property, plant and equipment 700,000, this is after the revaluation. You can revalue for accounting purposes, you cannot revalue it for tax purposes though. Then the tax purpose, for tax purpose, the asset value should be still 500,000. Taxable temporary difference is 200,000. Let us assume a tax rate of 20% for my convenience simplicity. So, we should recognize a deferred tax liability of 40,000. Deferred taxes are the taxes recognized for the future. What does it say? Simply, if you have this property at 500,000 rupees in the books, the market value is 700,000, and if you decide to sell this asset immediately today, you will end up in having a profit of 200,000, and this entire 200,000 will not be yours. You should pay 40,000 tax on this profit, but have you sold the asset? No. One day or other in the future, if you happen to sell this property at 700,000 market price, assuming this market price of 700,000 will continue to be the market price forever, then this entire profit of 200,000 should get deducted by 40,000, because the government will be collecting 40,000 tax, and our profit portion, the profit for which we deserve is not the entire 200,000, the profit for which we deserve should be only 160,000 rupees. So, as a result, if you prepare now deferred tax on revaluation, deferred tax on revaluation should be recognized to OCI itself 40,000, and the total OCI should be 160,000, and total comprehensive income should be 500 plus 160, 660,000. How will you bring those figures to equity statement now? This is the statement of changes in equity. Share capital, retained earnings, revaluation reserves and the total. There will be opening balances, we will just keep it blank. Then total comprehensive income. How much is the total comprehensive income? 660, and that gets allocated among the reserves concerned. Out of 660, 500,000 gets allocated to retained earnings, and 160 will get allocated to revaluation reserve. So, this is what LKS 1 says. The deferred tax effects on items recognized under OCI should be adjusted to OCI itself, and the reserve by which, the amount by which the reserve is recognized should be the net of deferred tax amount, So, the reserve is not created by 200,000, the reserve is created by how much? 160,000 rupees. So, I illustrated that, and that was profusely illustrated, and this is a very good understanding. And let us see how else this OCI and the profit figures need to be presented here. The statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income should be presented In addition to the profit or loss and other comprehensive income sections, profit or loss, total other comprehensive income for the period being the total of profit or loss and other comprehensive income. So, that is what I have shown here. An entity should present the following items in addition to the profit or loss and other comprehensive income as allocation of profit or loss and other comprehensive income for the period. A profit or loss for the period attributable to non-controlling interest and owners of the parent. Comprehensive income for the period attributable to non-controlling interest and owners of the parent. And this is required only when you prepare consolidated profit and loss and consolidated other comprehensive income. The chances of you being given a questions from this area will be very less, but since you want to practice this, I want to explain, and my intention is just to give the entire understanding, entire syllabus, and I want you to drink the cup of the standard right down to dreg without just sipping the bubbles floating on the surface. If not, you will not be a comprehensive and a complete product of an accountant. I want you to study this thoroughly from A to Z. Now, let us say company A and company B. Company A is the parent and company B is the subsidiary company. Company A has acquired 80% in company B. So, these are the facts given. Now, I will not show the entire profit and loss and OCI, but let me show you the profit and other comprehensive figures for both companies of parent and subsidiary company. Profit after tax. Profit after tax. Parent company has 500,000, subsidiary company has 400,000. Other comprehensive income under that, property, plant and equipment revaluation gain. Property, plant and equipment revaluation gain, company A 150,000, company B 120,000. Fair value changes of fair value through OCI investments A 80,000, B 40,000. Total other comprehensive income A 230, B 160,000, then total comprehensive income is equal to profit after tax and other comprehensive income 730,000. This is 560. So, there is nothing of consolidation, it has got nothing to do with the consolidation. So, let me get you to see how you prepare the same thing in a consolidated profit and loss. Consolidated profit and loss. Let me show that in a different color so that you can see it prominently. Profit after tax, it is on line by line consolidation. Parent company has 500, subsidiary company has 400,000, consolidated figure should be 900,000. Then other comprehensive income, property, plant and equipment, revaluation gain. Parent company 150, subsidiary company 120, consolidated figure is 270,000. Fair value change of fair value through OCI investments, parent company 80,000, subsidiary company 40, consolidated figure should be 120,000. Consolidated other comprehensive income total 100,000, this is 9, this is 3, this is total other comprehensive income, and then let me show you total comprehensive income. Total comprehensive income. How does it come? Total comprehensive income is equal to profit after tax plus total other comprehensive income 1,290,000. This total figures of profit figures and total comprehensive income should be attributed to parent shareholders and non-controlling shareholders. Let me show you that in a different color so that you can see it prominently. And this is continued, and this is the continuation of the previous. I do not have enough space here. Without scribbling, let me write in clear handwriting. Profit attributable to parent shareholders profit attributable non-controlling interest. You have got to show another division. Total comprehensive income attributable to parent shareholders, total comprehensive income attributable to non-controlling interest. Right. Now, this 900,000 is the total of parent company's profit and subsidiary company's profit. So, the parent does not deserve the entire 400,000 profit from company B. Out of 400,000, 20% should be given to NCI. 400 into 20% is 80,000, give it to NCI. So, out of 900, 80 was given to NCI and 820,000 should be given to parent company. So much so, total comprehensive income should also be allocated between the parent shareholders and non-controlling shareholders. Parent company has 730,000 total comprehensive income, subsidiary company has 560. Out of 560,000, 20% is allocated to NCI, it is 112,000. Then 1,290,000 minus 112,000 is the amount of total comprehensive income attributable to parent shareholders. 170. So, this is how it is, its division is shown in the profit and loss as required by L case 1. Statement of changes in equity. Information to be presented in the statement of changes in equity. An entity should present a statement of changes in equity which should include the following: total comprehensive income for the period, showing separately the amounts attributable to owners of the parent and non-controlling interest. B, for each component of equity, the effects of retrospective applications or retrospective restatement recognized in accordance with L case 8. For each component of equity, reconciliation between the carrying amount at the beginning and at the end of the period, separately disclosing changes resulting from profit or loss, other comprehensive income, transactions with owners in their capacity as owners, showing separately contributions by the distributions to owners and changes in ownership interest in subsidiaries that do not result in loss of control. Now, statement of changes in equity. Stated capital, this is ordinary share capital, preference share capital. The preference share capital can be non-redeemable, non-cumulative. Reserves, retained earnings, revaluation reserve, fair value changes or fair value through OCI, and then you can show the total and you know in consolidation even non-controlling shareholder should be part of equity. Non-controlling shareholders, and then the total equity figure will be shown here. Total equity figure will be shown here. Now, you need to show reconciliations of all these equity items. Starting, the reconciliation has to show how the opening balance transforms to the closing balance as a result of the transactions during the period. Opening balance should be taken, then total comprehensive income should be taken, dividend payments can be there, dividends, and share issues can be there, and closing balances can be taken here, and you know there is one particular area which may be hard to understand at your level. If a parent company sells part of a subsidiary company without losing the control, say for an example, parent company A had 80% in company B, and during the year parent company sold just 20% in company B, retaining further 60%. So, despite of the sale transaction, parent company continues to hold on to control of company B, and there the loss, I mean the change in the ownership, it is only just that the ownership has been revised from 80% to 60%, and that effect of the transaction profit or loss is not taken to profit and loss, that is shown separately in the equity statement. Even that has to be shown as part of equity changes here in the equity statement. Then let us go to going concern. Going concern. The conceptual framework states that the financial statements are normally prepared on the assumption that the reporting entity will continue for a foreseeable future. In other words, it is assumed that the entity will not enter into liquidations or cease to trade. LCase 1 states that management should assess whether the going concern assumption is appropriate. Management should take into account all available information about events within at least 12 months of the end of the reporting period. The following are indicators of going concern uncertainty: lack of cash and cash equivalent, increased levels of overdrafts and other forms of short term borrowings, major debt repayments due in the next 12 months period, a rise in payable periods, increased levels of gearing, negative cash flows particularly in relation to operating activities, disclosures or provisions relating to material legal claims. Large impairment losses. So, where there is uncertainty, management should consider all available information about the future, including current and expected profitability, debt repayment finance and potential sources of alternative finance. If there is a greater doubt or uncertainty, then more work will be required to evaluate whether or not the entity can be regarded as a going concern. Once management has assessed that there are no material uncertainties as to the ability of an entity to continue for the foreseeable future, the financial statement should be prepared on the assumption that the entity will in fact continue. In other words, the financial statements will be prepared on a going concern basis. When management is aware in making this assessment of material uncertainties related to events or conditions that may cause significant doubt upon the entity's ability to continue as a going concern, those uncertainties shall be disclosed. When financial statements are not prepared on a going concern basis, that fact should be disclosed together with the basis on which the financial statements are prepared and the reason why the entity is not regarded as a going concern. Right. Now, this going concern is a fundamental assumption you make when preparing the financial statements. What do you simply mean by the going concern? The entity has an intention to continue in operations for a foreseeable future. The entity neither intends to liquidate or to curtail the level, not to curtail the level of operation significantly, and we assume that the entity will continue in operations for a foreseeable future. And this financial statements in LKS 1 have been prescribed, the formats, the layouts and the valuation methods. Everything has been formulated, has been compiled, has been prescribed for an entity which is regarded, which is assumed to continue for a foreseeable future in operations. Now, just to give you a simple example, if you have inventories, inventories are shown in the balance sheet at the lower of cost of NRV, and property, plant and equipment. Property, plant and equipment will be carried either at cost model or revaluation model. Cost or revaluation models are used to recognize property, plant and equipment in the balance sheet because we assume that the business will continue for a foreseeable future. What if the entity decides to be liquidated just in few months' time? Then to the readers of the financial statements of a business who is going to die immediately, what is important for the readers of the financial statements of an entity which is going to die is not the cost of the revaluation value. What is important for the readers is the forced sales value. If you want to sell an asset, the market value will be the price at which you can sell. But if the buyer gets to know that that sale transaction is a depressed sale and you want to sell it somehow or other because you are under heavy financial pressure, you want to settle a bank loan immediately, then the buyer will not buy that at the market value. Forced sales value will be much more lower than the market value. So, the revaluation, the market value 10 million rupees, but the forced sale value is just 8 million rupees. And if it is a balance sheet of an entity which is going to be liquidated, which is going to die, which is going to close its eyes never to open again, what is important is not the historical cost of the market value to be presented in the balance sheet, and that has to be the forced sales value. I hope you got it. And everywhere, starting from property, plant and equipment right up to the bank OD, all the items of assets and liabilities, income expenses, the way they are measured, the way they are valued are to show that the business is of a going concern. The business is a business to continue in operations for the foreseeable future. Why are we recognizing, or why are we making a distinction of assets between current and non-current? Because we know the assets, the business will continue for more than 1 year's time. The assets to be realized within 1 year's time will be current, and the assets to be realized beyond 1 year's time should be non-current. If the business is going to be liquidated immediately, just in few months' time, you need not to make the distinctions of assets between current and non-current. You can slam and dump all the assets under one category of current. Why are we showing research and development? Because we think that we will continue for the future. Why are we showing deferred taxes? Because we will feel that the business will continue for a foreseeable future. Why are we classifying or making a distinctions of government grants under non-current and current? Because we feel that the business will continue for a foreseeable future. So, these statements and the specimens of the layouts of the financial statements have been developed in a way that the business, in a way that the readers will be impressed that the business is a business that will continue for the foreseeable future, and if it is not a business to continue for the foreseeable future, your presentation of financial statements will not be what we have learned, it is going to be completely different. And if somebody feels just at the age of 25 years he is going to die by tomorrow, he will never think of being a chartered accountant, he will never think of being the husband or a wife of another, he will never think of buying a house, he will never think of buying a vehicle, and he has different other arrangements and protocols. He will order a coffin, he will go and meet the chief incumbent in the temple to do the final pansakule, and lot of significant changes will be there in the daily routine work, and different arrangements and protocols will be there for a business which is not of a going concern. Now, whether to prepare the financial statements of a business of a going concern or otherwise, you need to make lot of assessments. Whether it is a business of a going concern or otherwise, you need to decide, and for that decisions you need to make lot of assessments. What are the assessments to be made? Lack of cash and cash equivalent. You are running out of cash. For considerable period you are running short of cash. Increased levels of overdrafts and other form of short term borrowings. And your plus cash balances have turned into negative cash balances, and those bank overdrafts do not seem to be of a temporary nature, and those bank overdrafts seems to continue for a considerable period. Major debt repayments due in the next 12 months, and we have taken some long term natured loan facilities, and we were supposed to keep the gearing ratio at a particular level. All non-current or long term natured borrowings have become immediately payable because we are in the breach of loan covenants and agreements continuously. So, most of the liabilities otherwise categorized under non-current have now become current. A rise in payables days to the creditors. We used to settle just in 30 days time. We never dragged beyond 30 days. Now, it has been a situation where we beg from the suppliers to keep supplying goods, but to make the settlements in 60 days. And this becomes 70 days, 70 days becomes 80 days, and that becomes 90 days. Some suppliers have stopped supplying materials because we are not making the settlements on time. Increased levels of gearing, negative cash flows, operating cash flows is a negative cash flow now. Particularly in relation to operating activities, disclosures of provisions relating to material legal claims. Some suppliers have not only stopped supplying materials to us, also filed papers against us for not making the payments, and we have to recognize provisions. And some employees have left the company without being compensated. So, those employees who lost their jobs have filed papers asking compensations, and we have created provisions for possible compensation payments. Then large impairment losses, and our business operations are not the type of operations we had before, and the cash flows from the operations have come down from 100% to 40%. Now there is a curtailment. I mean, we have lost our market by 60%, not that we have stopped. Some of the assets are idling now, and the factory does not work for 7 days a week, and we work only just 4 days a week. Why? Some of the assets are idling, and our operations cash flows are not of the magnitude it used to be before. So, those are not the exhaustive list of indications where the going concern assumption is impaired, some of the indications, and you need to make those assessments to see whether the going concern assumption can be applied or cannot be applied. And as a result of the assessments made, and if the management has material uncertainties as to the ability of the entity to continue for the foreseeable future, the financial statement should be prepared on the assumption that the entity does not continue for the foreseeable future, and your financial statement should be prepared accordingly. If your financial statements are not prepared on a going concern basis, you need to disclose that fact. Also, you need to disclose the basis on which the financial statements were prepared, and also you need to disclose the reasons why the entity is not considered to be a going concern. So, you need to make those disclosures. What are those disclosures? You need to disclose the basis on which the financial statements were prepared if the going concern assumption has not been appropriate in preparing the financial statements, and also you need to disclose the reason why the entity is not considered to be a going concern. Accrual basis. This is not something which is hard, or this is not something new, except for the cash flow statement. All the other statements are prepared on this basis of accrual concept. What do you mean by accrual concept? Incomes are recognized not when cash is received for income, when the income is occurred. Expenses are recognized to profit and loss not when the expenses are paid in cash, but when the expenses occur. In other words, you recognize income for the period to which it relates, irrespective of whether income has been received in cash or not. Similarly, you recognize expenditure for the period to which it relates, irrespective of whether we have paid in cash or not. Simply, the financial year ends on 31st December 2020, and we had sales of 5 million rupees received in cash, and we have another 2 million sales value where the control of the goods has passed to the customer and the revenue has occurred, but the customers have still not settled us. Then you include 2 million rupees into revenue, and that will be shown as a receivable in the balance sheet. If not for this accrual concept and assumption, your income figure would have been ever 5 million, not 7 million rupees. So, what makes you recognize 2 million into revenue is because the income recognition should be on accrual basis, not on cash basis. So, should be expenses. So, now LKS 1 emphasizes that except for the cash flow statement, all the other statements in financial statement should be on accrual basis. Consistency of presentation. The presentations and classifications of items in the financial statement should be retained from one period to the next unless it is clear that a change will result in a more appropriate presentation or a change is required by an SLFRS or LKS standard. The items in the financial statements, the presentations and classifications of items should be retained from one period to the next period unless it is clear that a change will result in a more appropriate presentation or a change is required by an SLFRS or LKS standard. Sometimes the presentations may be required otherwise by another accounting standard, then you can't tell, you need to change. Or if the change in the presentation of financial statements will enable the financial statements to show more relevantly and more faithfully, and then again the change in the presentations and the classifications may be permitted. If not, you need to retain the presentations and the classifications of items in the financial statements from the current year to the next year, and that is what you mean by consistency. Why is this consistency so important? It is the consistency that will safeguard, it is the consistency that will take care of the comparability. Where there is consistency, there is comparability. Where there is no consistency, no comparability. And where there is no comparability, that will hinder, that will make it harder for the decisions to be made by various stakeholders of the financial statements. Materiality and aggregation. Materiality and aggregation. An item is material if its omission or misstatement could influence the economic decisions of users taken on the basis of the financial statements. This should be based on the size or nature of an omission or misstatement. When assessing materiality, entity should consider the characteristics of the users of its financial statements. It can be assumed that these users have knowledge of business and accounting. To aid user understanding financial statements should show material classes of items separately. Immaterial items may be aggregated with amounts of a similar nature as long as this does not reduce understandability. Now, if you have 1000 list of customers, is it that we are supposed to show the entire list of customers either on the face of the balance sheet or as a note? No. These items of a similar nature with insignificant amounts can be aggregated together and you can show them as one item of trade receivables. So should be property, plant and equipment. So should be investment properties, and so should be inventories. That is where the aggregation comes into play. Materiality. Now, at the exam, this concept can be tested, saying that an entity paid 1 million rupees to get a transformer fixed within your factory premises, and you got the electricity board to fix this transformer within the premises of the entity. Discuss how this is recognized. Discuss. You need to examine in detail to show different aspects. That is what discuss requires you to do at the exam. Action verb. 1 million. Can this be an asset? It is one discussion. What is an asset? An asset is an economic resource arising from the past event. This is an economic resource arising from the past. So, what is the event that has triggered this asset? Electricity board fixing this equipment within your premises was the past event. And can you recognize it into your financial statements? Then you need to look at the recognition criteria. Is it controllable? Yes. Why? It is within your factory premises, and that is generating future economic benefits, and the value can be determined. So, it is beyond a doubt. It is not a $1 million question. In fact, since you know the definition of assets and the recognition criteria, it does become an asset, and no doubt. But truly are we going to show? And that depends on the level of materiality. And if this is a company of 10 billion worth of assets balance sheet, the total assets will be 10 billion rupees. And the other assets are like the Triton among the minnows. This 1 million is of no significance to anyone. Just 1 million rupees is just an insignificant amount compared to the other assets value. So, the company might have a policy of recognizing anything below 5 million rupees as expenditure, not as an asset. That depends on the level of materiality. If this is a material asset value, let it to be part of your asset portfolio, or if it is not of such a magnitude to be a significant amount of assets, then you recognize it as an expenditure. That is how you discuss. It can be an asset depending on the materiality, or it can be an expenditure depending on the insignificance level of the amounts. Now, when you show property, plant and equipment note as required by LK 16, say we have plant and machinery, opening balance 100 million rupees, and during the year being concerned we have purchased 50 million rupees additions. And in the process of you reconciling opening property, plant and equipment balance with the closing balance, you need to show this addition. Why that is an important, that is a material transaction to be disclosed separately. So, why do you consider that to be material? Plant and machineries are the assets that will contribute to your production directly. We had 100 million rupees at the beginning, current year 50 million. In other words, that indicates the fact that our production capacity has risen by 50%. What does it say? That is providing much of forward looking information to the readers. Look here guys, if you are a shareholder, you can expect more dividends because the next year profit will be 150 times as much as the profit in the current year. And your dividends will be higher by 150 times in the next year because there is an expansion in the business. And that information is material. A prospect investor who happens to see these transactions will buy the shares of the company, will prefer to buy the shares of the company like a duck to water, because he knows now the dividends are 10 million rupees, the next year dividends will be 15, and that is way more beyond, way more higher than his own expectations of return for his investments, and that disclosure is done separately because the level of materiality is very high. So, it is a subjective concern. What is material for you may not be material for someone else. So, that depends on the circumstances and you need to take the characteristics of the entity into account just to assess the level of materiality. Offsetting, this is another important concept. You know, assets and liabilities, incomes and expenses, are there instances where assets can be offset against liabilities and to show the net amount? Are there instances where expenses can be set off against income and to show the net income? Very few and far between. The standards, especially LKS 1, does not allow you to set off expenses against income and to show net income and to set off liabilities against assets and to show the net assets. And if that is allowed, that problem will aggravate to such an extent of you offsetting all the liabilities of the entity against the assets and to show only the net assets, and to offset all the expenses of the entity against the total income and to show the net profit. Then in the financial statements you will show only two amounts, that is your profit figure and your net assets equity figure. So, that will extend to that. That will aggravate to that extent if that permission had been given. LKS 1 say no, you can't offset expenses from income the way you like, you can't offset liabilities from assets the way you like, but there are few instances where you can offset. Now, let me take a simple example. Company A has a customer B. Company A has sold goods to company B 10 million rupees. This is receivable. And company B sells motor vehicles. We have purchased a motor vehicle from company A. I made a mistake. Company B has sold and we have bought it from company B, and we are supposed to pay 6 million rupees to company B. the entity has to receive 10 million from the same party, the entity has to pay 6 million rupees to the same party becomes an asset as well as a liability in our books. So, the entity is in a horns of a dilemma whether to show 10 million as a receivable separately and to show 6 million as a liability separately, or to net them off to each other and to show the final balance of 4 million rupees. This is what the company thinks of doing. What if you set off and show 4 million rupees? There is a danger. Why? 10 million has to be received just in 1 month's time. 6 million should be paid in 1 year's time. The timing of the cash inflow and the cash outflow of company A is the same or different? Timings are different. The sooner the cash flows are to be received, the lesser the risky of the cash flows. The later the cash flows are to be received, the higher the risky. Now, as a result, if someone is going to prepare a cash budget by relying on the figures in the financial statements, the cash flow will not be right. Why? If you set off 10 million rupees against 6 million and show the final amount of 4 million as a cash inflow, that is like showing both cash flows at the same time. Now, do both cash flows occur at the same time? No, at different times. So, then you can enable whoever who wants to prepare a cash budget to prepare the correct cash budget only if you show them separately. Then again, if somebody wants to make the business valuations where the risk factor need to be taken into account, the risk levels of both cash flow should be the same or should be different? Should be different. The risk levels of this will be lower because we have to receive it in 1 month's time. The risk level of this will be higher. In 1 year's time, maybe we will get into bankruptcy. Who knows? So, the risk levels are different. If the risk levels are different, you can't net them off. Now, from any disclosures, we expect only 3 things. We need to show amounts, we need to show timings of the cash flows, we need to show the risks of the cash flows. We need to show the amounts of the cash flows, we need to show the risks of the cash flows, and we need to show the timing of the cash flows. LKS 1 doesn't mind receivables and payables be netted off if the amounts and if the risks and if the timings of the cash flows are equal. But here you cannot net them off because different risk levels, different timing and different amounts, so separate disclosures are required. Now say, we will enter into a derivative contract like this. Company A enters into a contract with company B. What is it for? A will promise to transfer rupee equivalent of $10,000 in 3 months' time, and in return B will promise to transfer 2 million rupees. At the same time, the transaction to happen in 3 months' time from the date of the agreement, 3 months' time. Then $10,000 into the rupee equivalent, say the dollar is now 150 rupees, it is way more higher than 150, we will assume 150. And A's cash flow to B will be in 3 months' time and B's cash flow to A in 3 months' time. So, the timing of the cash flows are equal. And as the timings are equal, the risk levels are also equal. And on the agreement itself, both parties have agreed that without having 2 cash flows, one party has to make the net cash flow to the other. So, then if the exchange rate is 150, A has to pay B 1.5 million rupees, B has to pay 2 million rupees, without A first paying B 1.5 million rupees and then B paying 2 million rupees to A, might as well A to receive 500,000 rupees from B. There the net amount can be shown. Company A, without showing 1.5 million rupees liabilities and without showing 2 million rupees as assets, company A can net them off and show receivable balance of 200,000. Why? Because the netting of there is possible. Why? Timing of the cash flows are equal, risks of the cash flows are equal, and the entities, both parties agreed legally, that is the intention, not to have two different cash inflows and outflows, but to have a single cash flow. Then the netting off is possible. One example where the netting off can be possible is where you recognize the disposal profit of an asset or a liability. Now, you sell an asset with a carrying value of 1 million. Selling price is 1.5 million rupees. Is it that we are recognizing 1 million rupees into an expenditure and 1.5 into income? No. What do? 1.5 million sales proceeds will be set off against the carrying value so that we show the final net amount of 500,000. And sometimes we are showing debtors after netting off with provision for impairment. That is not the netting off. Sometimes we are showing inventories after netting off with the provisions for obsolescence. That is not netting off. That is the real genuine value of assets and liabilities. So, as a result, except for few instances specified by standards, you can't do the netting off. Netting off can be done only at instances specified by relevant information. Comparative informations need to be presented wherever required and at least one comparative period need to be presented along with the current year financial statements. And if there are changes in accounting policies and if you apply new accounting policy retrospectively, or if there are corrections of errors in the prior periods and if you restate retrospectively financial statements, maybe more than one comparative period, you need to give also comparative figures at the beginning of at the beginning of the comparative period as well, if there are retrospective applications of accounting policies and retrospective restatement of financial statements as a result of correcting prior period errors. So, we have discussed almost everything in LKS 1 and the disclosures are very simple and you can go through by yourself, and thanks for watching our videos of LKS 1. Hope to see you again with a new topic.